The wind howled low across the Wyoming plains, carrying sand and silence in equal measure. A storm was crawling in from the west, the kind that turned the horizon black and the air bitter. Inside the trading post, the smell of whiskey, sweat, and burned tobacco clung to the rafters. The men there, drifters, trappers, ex-soldiers, watched the door when it opened, the way hungry wolves watch a wounded deer. Jack Ransom stepped inside, dust crusted on his coat, eyes sharp and hollow from too many miles without luck. He had that look of a man who'd outlived most of his reasons. His boots hit the floorboards slow, deliberate. Behind the counter, the trader, a scrawny man named Pike, nodded once, wary. "What you after, Ransom?" "A horse," Jack said, voice flat as stone. "Something that can run hard and live long enough to get me south." Pike spat in a bucket. "Ain't many left for sale. Unless you're planning to trade more than the dust on your boots." Jack set a small pouch on the counter. 10 silver dollars clinked together, dull from handling. "It's all I've got." The sound drew attention. Men turned. A group of Cheyennes stood near the far wall. 6 warriors and an old man sitting silent, wrapped in a blanket of black and red patterns. His eyes, though clouded with age, had the weight of command. The others called him Chief Black Eagle. Pike cleared his throat. "That Mustang out back's wild one. Near killed 2 men trying to break it. You sure you want trouble that bad?" "I'm used to trouble," Jack said. The chief spoke in low Cheyenne, his words translated by a younger man with a scar along his cheek. "He says you offered $10. He says that is not enough for a horse that still carries thunder in its lungs." Jack met the chief's gaze. "Then tell him thunder don't feed me. I just need something that runs." For a long moment, no one breathed. Then the chief nodded once and motioned to his men. They led the Mustang forward, a paint stallion, white and brown, eyes like lightning. The animal pawed the dirt, muscles coiled tight as wire. The trade seemed done until the chief raised his hand. 2 figures stepped forward from the shadow of the wall. Young women wrapped in deerskin cloaks, hair braided with feathers and beads. They were sisters. That much was clear. The older one, Ayana, held her head high, calm as a horse itself. The younger, Tala, looked no older than 17, eyes fierce, mouth set in defiance. The translator hesitated, then said, "The chief says the horse does not go alone. He sends his daughters, too, as part of the deal." A murmur ran through the post. A chair scraped. Someone laughed under his breath. Jack froze, his stomach dropping like a rock in a well. "That's not what I'm buying." The chief's gaze didn't waver. He said something short, clipped. "The chief says balance must be paid." The translator continued. "You take his horse. You take what rides with it. They serve as keepers of the spirit you now own." Jack's hand drifted to the butt of his Colt. "I ain't taking women anywhere." "You tell him that." The translator's tone hardened. "Then no trade. Or maybe no cowboy." The air in the post thickened. A few men reached for their rifles, uncertain whose side to take. Pike muttered, "Ransom, don't start nothing you can't finish." Jack looked from the chief to the sisters. Ayana's eyes met his, calm but unreadable. Tala's burned with quiet fury, as if daring him to refuse. He swallowed hard, jaw tight. "Fine, but I don't answer for what happens out there." The chief stood, stepped forward, and placed his hand on Jack's chest. His voice came soft, almost a whisper. The translator murmured. "He says, you bought more than a horse. You bought the road that leads to your reckoning." Jack said nothing. He took the reins. The door swung open behind him, and the storm rolled closer. They rode out at dusk. The sky burned red where the sun fell behind the hills. The plain stretched endless, broken only by sagebrush and the slow sway of the Mustang's mane. Jack rode ahead. The sisters followed without word, each on their own horse. The silence between them was deep enough to drown in. By nightfall they made camp near a dry creek bed. The wind moaned through the rocks, and somewhere far off a coyote called. Jack lit a fire, small and mean, and sat with his back to it. The girls unpacked a pouch of dried meat and laid it out carefully. They didn't look at him. Didn't need to. He watched them from the corner of his eye. Ayanna moved with slow precision, every motion thoughtful, controlled. Tala was all heat and impatience, muttering in Cheyenne as she tossed sticks into the fire. She didn't like him, and he didn't blame her. Jack finally spoke. "You don't have to stay with me. Come morning, you can head back." Ayanna shook her head. "No, the chief sent us. We go until the balance is made." "What balance?" he asked. She didn't answer, only stared into the fire. Sparks climbed toward a bruised sky. Later, while the sisters slept wrapped in their blankets, Jack sat awake, gun resting across his knees. His mind wandered back to the war, to the sound of bugles and dying men calling for help that never came. He'd been running ever since. A horse had once saved his life out on the Arkansas plains. He'd lost it in a poker game to a drunk who later got himself shot. Buying this new one wasn't about travel. It was about redemption. But now he was saddled with ghosts that breathed and spoke Cheyenne. He looked at Ayanna sleeping near the fire. Her hand rested protectively over her sister's. He wondered what they thought of him, a trespasser, a thief, a fool. Maybe all three. Before dawn, the wind changed. The horses grew restless. Ayanna stirred, frowning. "We are being watched," she whispered. Jack listened. The faint crack of twigs reached his ears. He rose quietly, cocked his revolver, and scanned the ridge. Moonlight cut across the land, silvering every rock. A shadow moved, then another. "Get down," he hissed. The first shot tore through the quiet like thunder. A bullet split the campfire in two, sparks flying. Tala screamed. Jack dove for cover behind a boulder, returning fire toward the ridge. Figures appeared, 3, maybe 4, white men in dust-stained coats, rifles glinting in the moonlight. Rustlers, the kind that hunted wild stock and sold it across state lines. They must have followed from the post. "Stay low." Jack barked. Tala crawled toward her sister, eyes wide. Another shot cracked. Dirt spat near her hand. Ayanna rose, bow drawn from her saddle, an arrow between her fingers. The string twanged, and one of the rustlers fell, clutching his shoulder with a howl. Jack's revolver barked twice, sharp, fast. Another man went down. Then silence. The last rustler tried to run. Jack sprinted from cover, boots pounding the earth. He caught the man by the collar, slammed him against a tree. The rustler's eyes were wild. Didn't mean no harm, just a horse. Jack's fist broke his sentence. The man crumpled, breath ragged. Jack looked back toward camp. The fire burned low. Ayanna was kneeling beside Tala, checking her for wounds. None found. Just fear. Jack reloaded, hands shaking from adrenaline. "You always carry a bow?" he asked Ayanna. She met his eyes. "Only when I expect to need it." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he saw the blood on her sleeve. "You're hit." She glanced down. A thin red line traced her arm where a bullet had grazed. "It will pass." Jack tore a strip from his bandana and wrapped it tight. She didn't flinch once. When it was done, she said quietly, "You fight like a man who's lost everything." "Maybe I have." The Mustang snorted nearby, restless from the gunfire. Lightning flashed along the horizon, and the scent of rain rolled in. Jack turned toward the dark east, where the chief's land stretched far and unforgiving. He muttered, half to himself, "What in God's name did I just buy?" Ayanna looked up at the clouds. "Not a horse," she said softly. "A road you cannot turn back from." They packed in silence before dawn. The air carried the clean, sharp smell of rain. As they mounted up, Jack caught Ayanna watching him again, eyes calm, searching, almost pitying. He tipped his hat once. "We ride south. If anyone follows, we ride harder." She nodded. "And if balance follows, Cowboy?" He didn't answer. As they rode into the storm, the thunder behind them sounded too much like war drums. The storm broke at dawn, a roar of thunder chasing them across the plains. The sky was a churn of black and gray, rain slashing sideways like whipcords. Jack rode first, the Mustang pounding hard to the sodden grass, its mane slick with water. Ayanna and Tala followed close, their horses stumbling through mud that sucked the hooves and boots alike. They hadn't spoken since the ambush. There was no breath to waste on words. The land itself felt against them, open, exposed, the kind of place where a man could die and no one would ever find the bones. Behind them, faint but certain, came the echo of pursuit. Hooves. More than one rider. Jack turned in his saddle, squinting through the rain. "We've got company," he said, his voice roughened by cold and grit. Ayanna didn't ask who. She just kicked her horse forward. "We must cross the river before they do." The path dipped into a narrow valley where the sweet water ran swollen, with storm runoff. The river was twice its usual size, white and angry. Jack reined in at the edge. "That current'll kill us." Tala's voice cracked. "Better that than a bullet." Lightning flashed, brief, blinding. It showed riders on the ridge behind them, black shapes against the sky. Rustlers, the ones who'd lived. Jack swore under his breath. He slid from the saddle and waded into the shallows, testing the pull. It nearly took him down. He looked at Ayanna. "You sure we can make it?" She met his gaze, calm amid the storm. "If we don't, they will." No time left. He mounted again, tightened his grip on the reins. "Stay close. Don't fight the current. Let it take you halfway, then angle out." The first step into the torrent was like riding into the throat of hell. The river seized the Mustang, dragging it sideways. Water climbed to Jack's knees, then his waist. The animal fought to keep footing. Tala screamed as her horse lost balance, flung sideways into the surge. Ayanna wheeled her mount without hesitation and dove in after her. Jack cursed and spurred forward, fighting the current until his muscles burned. For one terrible instant, he saw Tala's small form vanish under the waves. Then Ayanna's hand broke the surface, gripping her sister's braid, dragging her up. Jack leaned from the saddle, reached out, caught Tala by the arm, and hauled her across his lap. The river spun them in a mad circle before spitting them out on the far bank, soaked, coughing, half alive. They lay there in the mud, gasping. The riders on the ridge had stopped, watching. The rain fell between them like a curtain of silver. Ayanna stood slowly, hair plastered to her face. "They will come another way," she said. "We must keep moving." Jack looked at her, at the fire that hadn't gone out even when the river tried to drown it. And he nodded. They rode on through the storm until the land rose and the water faded to mist. Behind them, the tracks of the pursuers washed clean. For now, they were ghosts in the rain. By nightfall, they reached the edge of a canyon, a narrow cut in the earth where red cliffs rose like wounded giants. Jack built a small fire inside a hollowed rock face, shielded from the wind. Tala slept almost at once, exhaustion claiming her. Ayanna sat across from Jack, dry her hair with a strip of cloth, her face shadowed by the flicker of flame. Jack stared into the fire until the shapes inside it began to twist into faces he couldn't forget, men in blue uniforms. Smoke, the sound of horses screaming. He rubbed a hand over his eyes, but the ghost didn't fade. "You saw war," Ayanna said quietly. He looked up. "I did." "You lost men. All of them." Ayanna's eyes softened, though her voice stayed even. "What happened?" Jack hesitated, then spoke, the words slow, like pulling barbed wire from a wound. "We were scouts, out near Kansas. Orders came to clear a valley. They said it was a rebel hideout. It wasn't, just a camp of Cheyenne families. I tried to stop it. The officer wouldn't listen." He paused. The wind outside moaned through the canyon. "When the shooting started, I ran back to pull the children out. I saved one, maybe two, but I lost my men, lost everything that meant anything. The army called it success. I called it murder." Ayanna's gaze didn't waver. "And you think buying a horse will change that?" He gave a humorless laugh. "I thought maybe if I could start fresh, I'd stop seeing their faces." "You won't," she said simply, "but you can learn to walk beside them." Silence settled, heavy but not cruel. The fire cracked. She reached into her pouch, pulled out herbs, crushed them with a stone, and handed the mixture across the flames. "For pain, drink it. It will help you sleep." Jack took it, though he doubted anything could make him rest easy again. The drink was bitter. He swallowed it anyway. "Why did your father send you with me?" he asked, voice low. Ayana's eyes glimmered in the firelight. "Because the spirits told him the horse carried a storm, and that a man would come riding it, a man who could either bring death or restore balance. He sent us to see which one you would be." Jack looked away. "You still don't know?" "No," she said. "Not yet." The fire burned low. For a while they said nothing, just listened to the night sounds, the whisper of wind, the shift of stones. Jack's eyes grew heavy, and for the first time in years, sleep took him without dreams of gunfire. Morning came harsh and bright. The storm was gone, but the air smelled of iron and wet soil. Jack saddled the Mustang in silence. Tala yawned and rubbed her eyes, complaining softly in Cheyenne. Ayana checked the horse's hooves. Her sleeve still stained where the bullet had grazed her arm. They were breaking camp when a shot cracked through the canyon. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. A bullet struck the rock near Jack's head, showering him with grit. "Down!" he shouted. More shots followed. Rustlers again, 3 of them this time, slipping between the rocks, rifles glinting in the morning light. Jack returned fire, ducking behind a boulder. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, sharp and metallic. One of the rustlers shouted, "We want the horse!" "Ransom." "Step aside." "Come take him." Jack growled. Ayana had drawn her bow again, but her arm trembled. The wound from before had weakened her. She loosed an arrow anyway. It struck a man in the leg, spinning him down into the dirt. Tala screamed as another bullet whined past her ear. Jack pivoted, fired twice, dropped the shooter where he stood. The third man tried to run, but Jack's shot caught him square in the back. The sound of it echoed long after the man fell. Silence reclaimed the canyon, broken only by the hiss of wind. Jack's chest heaved. His revolver smoked in his hand. He turned. Ayana was sitting against a rock, pale, blood seeping from her shoulder. The wound had reopened. He knelt beside her. "Let me see." "It's nothing," she said, but her breath hitched. "Hold still." He tore a strip from his shirt, pressed it against the wound. His hands were rough, trembling. "You keep saving everyone else. Let someone save you for once." Ayana's lips curved faintly. "Then save yourself first." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just a woman, but the strength of a whole people who refused to break. When the bleeding slowed, she took his hand, surprising him. "You carry too much guilt, Cowboy. It blinds you." "Maybe," he said softly, "but it's all I've got left." Tala, watching from a few feet away, frowned. She didn't understand their words, but she understood the closeness, the quiet between them that wasn't just silence. They buried the dead rustlers in the canyon dust. Jack said no prayer. Some men didn't deserve them. When it was done, Ayana stood, weak but unbowed. "They won't be the last," she said. "No," Jack replied, "but I'm done running." He looked at the horizon, where the plains shimmered under the new sun. "Your father's men, they'll come next, won't they?" "Yes." "He will think you stole us. The law of our people demands balance." Jack holstered his gun, eyes dark with resolve. "Then maybe it's time I face what I owe. All of it." Ayana nodded. "If you mean to return, it will not be as you were." He smiled faintly. "That's the idea." They rode out of the canyon by noon. The land had turned gold again, the sky washed clean by rain. The Mustang moved easy beneath him now, as if it finally decided to trust. As they rode, Ayana glanced at him. "Why did you save Tala back in the river?" Jack shrugged. "Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't." "She reminds you of someone?" He hesitated, then said, "A little girl, Kansas. She didn't make it." Ayana's gaze softened. "Then maybe you saved her twice." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and the far-off cry of a hawk. Tala began humming softly, a song without words, mournful and haunting. For the first time since he'd met them, Jack didn't feel like he was being followed. He felt like he was being led. By the time the sun began to sink, they'd crossed into the Chief's Valley, wide and green, framed by hills that glowed like copper in the dying light. Smoke curled from distant lodges. The air carried a weight of waiting. Jack reined in his horse. No turning back now. Ayana's face was unreadable, but her voice was calm. No, the balance will be decided soon. He took a long breath, eyes on the horizon. Then let's finish what we started. The last light faded behind them as they rode toward the valley, toward the reckoning that had been chasing him long before $10 ever hit that counter. The valley lay quiet under a pale dawn, a stretch of gold grass rippling in the wind like a sea of whispers. Jack Ransom rode slow, reins loose in his hands, the Mustang steady beneath him. Behind him, Ayana followed with Tala close beside, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Smoke rose from the lodges ahead, thin spirals curling against a sky too still for comfort. They'd been riding for hours, saying little. The silence wasn't peace. It was a kind of silence that waits for a gunshot. When they reached the edge of the encampment, warriors stepped from between the lodges, bows drawn, rifles glinting. They surrounded the trio in a tightening circle. No one shouted. No one moved. It was a silence before a storm breaks. Jack stopped, raised his hand slowly. "I came to end it," he said. From the largest lodge stepped Chief Black Eagle, his black and red blanket draped over his shoulders like the weight of an entire people. His eyes were sharp despite the years carved into his face. He stopped a few paces from Jack. The translator from the trading post stood beside him, jaw clenched tight. "You return," the man said in English, "with the daughters you stole." "I didn't steal them," Jack said. "They came with a horse. Your chief's word, not mine." Murmurs rose from the gathered men. The chief raised his hand, silencing them. He spoke a long sentence, voice low but iron-strong. The translator swallowed. "He says you broke balance, that you took what was sacred and rode into blood. He says the spirits demand payment." Jack met the chief's eyes. "Then let the debt be mine alone." The chief studied him for a long time. "You offer your life?" the translator asked. "If it buys theirs, yes." Tala gasped. "No." She stepped forward, trembling. "He saved us." "He." Ayana touched her shoulder gently, silencing her. "This is not your choice," she said softly. The chief spoke again, voice carrying across the valley. "If the white man wishes to face the spirits, he will face them with honor, but his blood may not be the only blood spilled today." Jack's fingers twitched near his gun, though he knew it would do no good here. The circle of warriors shifted, tightening. Tension pulled the air thin. Then shouts from the ridge. Riders. Dust trails cutting down the slope. Not Cheyenne. The rustlers. The few who had survived the canyon ambush. And they were bringing more men. Jack turned in his saddle, swore under his breath. "Hell's coming," he said. Gunfire cracked from the ridge, bullets whining through the grass. A warrior went down with a cry. Panic rippled through the camp as women ran for the lodges. The chief's men returned fire, arrows arcing high. "Get the chief to cover." Jack yelled, already drawing his revolver. Ayana stayed beside him, grabbing a fallen rifle. "We fight." Tala froze, eyes wide. Jack grabbed her wrist and shoved her toward the chief. "Go." The air exploded with sound, gunfire, horses screaming, men shouting in both languages. Jack fired from behind an overturned wagon, dropping two rustlers before they cleared the ridge. The Mustang reared beside him, wild and defiant. Ayana crouched a few yards away, firing the rifle in steady rhythm, her face set in grim focus. She moved like she'd been born to battle, fearless and sure, the rhythm of the fight running in her blood. But there were too many. The rustlers were desperate men, drawn by greed and revenge. They surged into the camp like a wave, setting fire to the lodges as they came. Smoke rose thick and black against the sky. Jack ducked behind a cart as bullets splintered the wood. He reloaded, his hand steady though his heart hammered. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the chief fall, struck in the chest. "Chief!" Ayana shouted, dropping the rifle and running to him. Jack cursed and ran after her. Two rustlers closed in from behind, one swinging a rifle but toward her head. Jack fired once. The man dropped. The other rushed him, knife in hand. They collided hard, rolling in the dirt. The blade grazed Jack's ribs before he slammed the man's head against a rock. Blood spattered his sleeve. Ayanna knelt beside the chief, her hands pressed to the wound. The old man's breath came shallow, eyes unfocused. He reached for her, murmured words she barely caught. The translator shouted. He says the balance must be kept through fire, through blood. Jack dropped beside them, breath ragged. Tell him it's done. Tell him I'll finish it. The chief's gaze shifted to Jack. He smiled faintly, a small weary thing, and pressed something into Jack's palm. A strip of leather burned at the edges, marked with black eagle. Then his hand went still. Ayanna bowed her head, tears streaking her dusted face. Rage hit Jack like a bullet. He rose, spun, and fired until his gun clicked empty. The rustlers were pulling back now, their numbers broken by the Cheyenne counterfire. Smoke rolled over the valley, the air thick with the stink of burned grass and gunpowder. The last man standing was their leader, a scar-faced brute Jack, remembered from the trading post. He raised his rifle and fired. Ayanna cried out, falling back. Jack didn't think. He drew his knife and charged. The two men slammed together in a storm of fists and fury. The world shrank to sweat, dirt, and the wet sound of struggle. The rustler swung wild, but Jack ducked and drove the blade deep into his gut. The man's eyes went wide. "For $10, he rasped. "For every damn thing that came with it," Jack said, and twisted the knife. When it was done, he stumbled back, chest heaving. The man dropped, dust rising around him. The valley had gone still again, just a crackle of burning lodges and the low whine of wind through grass. Jack turned toward Ayanna. She was kneeling beside the chief's body, blood on her hands, her face a mask of grief and defiance. He walked to her slowly, each step heavy as lead. "He's gone," he said softly. She nodded once. "The balance is paid." Behind them, the Mustang snorted and pawed the earth, restless but alive. Warriors began tending to the wounded, moving through the smoke. The translator approached, eyes hollow. "The chief's word was final," he said. "You may go. You have earned your freedom." Jack looked at Ayanna. "And you?" She met his gaze, pain deep but calm. "My place is here now. To rebuild, to bury what's left." He swallowed hard, the ache in his chest sharper than any bullet. "Then I'll take Tala. Keep her safe." Ayanna nodded. "She will follow you. But you will carry more than her, Jack Ransom. You will carry what this day made of you." He looked down at the strip of leather in his hand. The black eagle burned into it, and closed his fingers around it. "I'll remember." They said no more. Words were too small for what hung between them. As the sun began to set, painting the valley in fire and gold, Jack saddled the Mustang once more. Tala climbed behind him, silent, her small hands clutching his coat. He looked back once. Ayanna standing among the ashes, hair lifting in the wind, her face turned toward the dying light. Then he rode away. They rode for days, following the river south. The world felt quieter now, emptier somehow, though Jack knew it wasn't the world that had changed. It was him. Tala didn't speak much. When she did, it was in soft Cheyenne words he didn't understand, songs whispered to herself when the nights grew long. He listened anyway, the sound steadying something inside him. The Mustang seemed tireless, carrying him across broken plains and wind-cut ridges. Jack felt every mile, every ache. The wound from the canyon had opened again, but he ignored it. Pain was just another companion on the trail. One evening, they stopped by a stream where cottonwoods leaned over the water. Jack built a small fire and watched Tala gather sticks, her movements quiet but sure. When she finished, she sat beside him, gaze lost in the flames. She said, "You have a heavy heart." Tala murmured in halting English. Jack smiled faintly. "Your sister says too much." Tala shook her head. She said, "It makes you strong. But strong hearts break easy." He looked at her, really looked, and saw how young she was, how much she'd already seen. "You'll be all right," he said. "You're tougher than most men I've met." She gave a small, sad smile. "We all have to be." They sat in silence a while. The river whispered, the fire crackled, and the stars came out, sharp and endless. When she slept, Jack stayed awake, staring into the flames. His thoughts wandered back to Ayanna, to the valley, to the chief's last words. Balance must be kept. He thought of all he'd lost and all he'd found along the way. Not gold, not land, not even peace, but something quieter, something harder won. By dawn, the fire had burned the coals. He rose, packed the saddle, and looked east. The horizon was just a thin red line between night and day. He whispered into the still air, "Maybe I went to buy a horse. Maybe I bought my soul back instead." Tala stirred behind him, rubbing her eyes. "Where we go now?" He mounted up, reached a hand to help her climb. "Anywhere that ain't burning." She smiled faintly, climbing behind him. The Mustang shifted, eager for the road. They rode toward the rising sun, the wind cold but clean. Jack didn't look back this time. Some things you leave behind not because you forget, but because they've already become a part of you. The land opened wide before them, wild and waiting. And for the first time in a long while, Jack Ransom felt like he might just belong to it.